Thank you very much. I think yes, started now. Thank you very much. Okay, and welcome to Welsh Church at the State Committee. Okay, the first item on the agenda is any apologies for absence?
None received by Democratic. I actually think we have a full house, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, minutes of the meeting held on 4th of October. Are you happy for me to sign them? Yep, fine. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, any declarations of interest? No, none received. Okay. All right then. The first report is reports to Chief Executive Land at Cassie Hill. Lorna, do you want to introduce this? Thank you.
Chair, I'm really sorry to interrupt. Should I do the housekeeping notes at the start? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Forgot.
I'll be as quick as I can. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed for part 1, as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up or use the raise hand function? Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues or to grab the attention of the Chair or Democratic Services Officer. And if any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard, when they are addressing the committee, then they need to let the Chair and Democratic Officer know. If they have a webcam, they should turn this off, as this might help with broadband or Wi-Fi issues. And just a reminder to all participants that if we could keep cameras being turned on to trustees and officers, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're now moving on now to item number 4, Land at Cassie Hill. Lorna, do you want to introduce it, please?
Thank you, Chair. It's an update report for committee further to the last resolution in June 2021, when committee previously resolved to dispose of the land on terms and conditions to be agreed to the applicant. There's a further report at part 2 detailing some further information, but the committee are asked to take representations from local residents. Councillor Nugent Finn, I understand, is here to represent local residents, but also the applicant is invited to attend as well to address committee. Since the last committee, heads of terms were drafted in consultation with the chair of the committee and subsequently agreed with the applicant. Legal officers were instructed and heads of terms were sort of with legal officers for drafting, but no further action was taken since that time because of the representations from local residents and Councillor Nugent Finn. Following consideration of the representations made under this Part 1 agenda, I just invite the committee to consider the representations under Part 2 of the agenda and consider next steps.
Okay, thank you very much, Lorna. Okay, and now, first of all, can I welcome Mr. Finch and Mr. Shear to the meeting, along with Councillor Rachel Nugent-Finn, and I believe we've got a member of the public, Mr. Parsons, as well, who's also present at this meeting. Now, I'm going to invite Mr. Shear to speak you have 3 minutes, Mr. Shear. I do not want anyone interrupting Mr. Shear during that time, okay? And what will happen after the end of 3 minutes, Mr. Shear will stay on the line, as we often do in planning, and then there will be a discussion with Mr. Shear. If there's any points that you want to raise with Mr. Shear, any points of clarification, okay? Once that has happened, we'll then go on to Mr. Finch, who represents some of the residents in Cassie Hill, and he'll also have 3 minutes, and then there'll be an opportunity then for Mr. Finch to stay on the call to listen to any points of clarification, okay? So, Mr. Shear, if you're available, when you're available, if you could be on call and show yourself, that would be good. And then I will start the 3 minutes. When you're ready, Mr. Shear. Hello, Mr. Shear.
Hello, how are you doing? How is everyone? Thanks for hearing me. It's just about the land at Cassie Hill. It's in front of the property, just slightly to the side. It's been overgrown.
I'm going to start you. Is it okay for me to start you for 3 minutes now? Is that okay, Mr. Shear?
That's fine, yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Barney, start now.
It's just we've gone through everything. I've approached the church, approached the council about purchasing the land adjacent to the house. Is access to the other properties. It's been overgrown for years. Bit of an eyesore full of rats. I'm trying to get the top of my drive all done. It's a one-track road in. It's a one-track road out. The residents at the top of Cassie Hill, if anyone's in, they've got to reverse all the way down about, I don't know, 50 metres to get out, and everybody turns round on my drive. The wall adjacent to the lane's getting hit, even more so now in lockdown with deliveries. So I just wanted to buy the land, tarmac it, make sure all the access is still there, as in with the terms, make sure it's usable for everyone else so people can turn around and go, because it's a 24-point turn on my drive. There's since the last meeting, from the terms were drawn up and I was told the land could be purchased, I've instructed Openreach, which I had to pay for, which is £1,000, to remove the lamppost to create a turning circle so we can turn around and get out. I've also got an architect to put drawings forward that I gave to Rachel Nugent to make sure everything was done prior and properly to planning and regulations for the lane access for everyone, being totally transparent. There's no other agenda apart from just relieving congestion in the lane, making it look better and improving the area for myself, the other residents, even for the residents in Church Terrace, because they'd have better access. I know they've, since I did mention to Mr. Finch that I would like to purchase it, they've levelled the land with using recycled material. It's not really good access still for anyone on foot or, as I was told, in a wheelchair. This would be tarmacked when I had all the area done, totally improving it. And like I said, putting the drawings into planning to make sure I'm not going anything, because it is a conservation area, to make sure that's right. And in the plans, anything that we removed, the small wall, I couldn't get the wall out, would be reused on just to make it more in keeping with the area. That's the only agenda there is. It's just to relieve congestion in where we live and make it better for all access. The next door neighbours park on my drive when they're dropping their children off. At the top, there is no access or no turning point. So you can imagine everyone going to work at the same time. It gets a little bit busy in the lane, and any delivery drivers that do come up have got to turn around, and that's causing problems. And I reckon just doing that. And as in per the terms of the agreement that was signed, I can't do anything.
3 minutes, can I just?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Unmuted. Thank you very much, Mr. Shear, for your contribution. Does anyone want to ask Mr. Shear any questions at all? Yes, Councillor Janice Charles.
Yes, hello, Mr. Shear. Thank you for your time today. There are a couple of questions I'd like to ask, and one of them is, would your business impact on the lane usage?
My business? No, I park my van on my drive. That's all I do. I've got a workshop away from my business, from here, that I carry my work out on. I've got a premises in Herbert Street, and we're just about to move into another premises. I only use I'm not lucky enough to be able to afford a car and a van, so I park my van on the drive in the night. That is it. There's no business carried on in my premises.
There are a lot of concerns by the other residents, unfortunately, about how you would ensure that this lane would not be blocked.
I wouldn't park there. It'd only be using for the turning circle. What do you mean by blocked?
Well, you know, the residents are extremely concerned, Mr. Shear, that you will block this lane off, and they would really like some assurances. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, of course, it's full of. I've agreed to all the terms. If I don't agree to the terms, we can't do anything with the lane. And in the head of the terms, I cannot block the lane off. I've got to keep access for everyone. that's all in the heads of terms that was drafted. It's like everything everyone's pulling up has already been addressed in the heads of terms prior by the legal team that drew them up.
Yeah, I have to ask the questions because I've been asked to ask the questions from the residents who are extremely concerned. But thank you for your answers.
Has anyone else got any questions of Mr. Shear? I don't have anyone indicated. Can I thank you for your contribution, Mr. Shear? Okay.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
That's all right. You can stay on the call, but if you could turn your screen off, that would be good.
Of course, no problem. Shall I mute?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Okay. Now, Mr. Finch now. Hello, Mr. Finch. If you can come online and show your screen, please.
Hello.
Hello there. Hiya.
Hi.
Okay.
Am I on it? Yes.
Okay, when you're ready, Mr. Finch, you got 3 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, fine.
I'm representing my parents and Lynn and the residents of Church Terrace, because obviously they're all elderly. They've got steep steps out the front now, and the reason we've always cleared this lane from as long as I can remember, I'm over 40 odd years old now, and I've been doing it for the last 40 years basically with my parents, and now they're getting old. We've cleared all the lane because we've asked the council, and then we found out it's something to do with the church. The lane, we've cleared it out. And then after we cleared it out, we asked the council to come and have a look, see if they was happy. And obviously they've had to pay for this out of their pension money, because everyone used to say it was a private lane and there was nobody else's apart from the access to our properties, which we've obviously been told is on the deeds since 1897 or something. And the reason obviously I cleared the lane then was for my parents. And like going back last year, I was going to finish the lane with stone dust, so obviously they can get the wheelchair down and the scooter. But obviously then we was told we can't touch it anymore because of obviously the issues which is going on. And then the boundary walls, the wall which they're concerned about going down the lane from Mr. Shires, is that obviously it's a supporting wall. They're saying it's a boundary wall, and obviously in the conservation area, and they're going to worry about the volume of tarmac, and with the freak weather storms we have these days, that obviously the water would come down our way into the back of their properties, i.e. the kitchens and the back doorways, because there was not adequate drainage, and the slope is eroding away out the side as well on the lane. And they'd want to know how high was the wall, how high are they going to come all the way to the gates, the back gates to the house, because we've been told first it was the whole lane, and now it's apparently partial of the lane. We haven't got full notification of that, and the residents wasn't told anything about it until obviously we cleared it and done all the groundworks to the lane. So obviously my parents have paid for the groundworks for all the lane to be accessible, and obviously that is their worries now with it all, and obviously the volume of the water off the tarmac, and if it obviously goes ahead with the tarmac, and they wondered why they wasn't notified by council, surveyors, everyone who was involved in the lane and the purchase of the lane, how they was not offered it first, because obviously it's their access which they've always used since they've lived here. And
sorry, that's 3 minutes.
For 50 years. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Finch.
you.
Has anyone got any questions of Mr. Finch? Yes, Councillor Janice Charles.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Finch. I understand that the Welsh Church Act appointed an independent surveyor, so but you didn't consult with any of the Church Terrace residents, is that right?
Yes, no one's had no confirmation. This is all we've heard is through obviously this meeting that we obviously heard about the surveyor had come here, but no one's had letters, nothing at all.
Are any of the other residents interested in purchasing the lane between them, or is it just the one application we've had? Are you aware that anybody else would be interested, or what their fears are?
My parents, and obviously number 3, because Pam has now sadly passed away in number 2.
So, right. So really then, you've got no objection to the lane being bought, but you want something in writing or something legally binding to assure that this lane will not be blocked, because I believe there have been in the past things that have been happening.
Well, I've got it's because I'm new to all this on the internet. I've got pages of our neighbour and photographs of everything from the lane. If I could send them through to you, I don't know how I do all that.
Well, what are they, Mr. Finch? What are these photographs and letters of?
Blockages of the lane of
Okay. Right. Okay. So the lane being blocked. So.
And obviously
from deliveries, because you're saying that the residents are elderly, so are they getting deliveries in this lane, or is it only Mr. Shire that is getting deliveries? Looking at that picture there,
it'd be only the top residents up the top of Cassie Hill,
right,
who have the deliveries, because they could have them out the front. But the decline on the steps. Basically, my mother's does all charity work she has done for the last 30 odd years, but now she can only really go out on the weekends when she got to do a disabled swimming for the community, and sometimes she can't do that because obviously the steepness of the steps, and we've been told we can't do anything else out the back garden until the back lane until this is all resolved.
All right, I see. Well, thank you very much for that, Mr. Finch. Thank you.
Okay.
I think Councillor Stephen William wants to say something as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick question, Mr. Finch. I'm familiar with the area and have indeed, when delivering supplies to people, been cursing the inability to turn around many times, particularly difficult when you're in a van going down backwards. But I was more interested in what you referred to earlier about you have photographic evidence of the lane being blocked.
Yes.
And without putting too fine a point on it, the person blocking the lane, are they different people all the time, or is it the same person blocking the lane?
Well, I've got photographs of Lynn, and it's obviously stating UPV spray in Wales, but obviously there's been builders doing it before now, and obviously all the bins, because obviously no disrespect, I haven't got a problem with anyone up there, and obviously they got to put their bins, and they obviously put their bins at the beginning of the lane, yeah, as well. But obviously it does get blocked, you know. Yeah. I don't want to, you know, it's just I'm representing my parents because obviously they've lived here all their lives, and it's a conservation area. They wanted to keep it all in line, and obviously they're worried because obviously the surface of a flat surface, where is the water then eventually going to go? It's going to erode either the bank or come through our back gardens, because the drainage up here is appalling. It always has been.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Can I just ask you a question, Mr. Finch?
Yes.
You mentioned about flooding before, and you said that one of the concerns you have with the tarmacking is flooding. Has the area been flooded? Because I noticed there's a brook not far away from there. Has it been flooded before?
It has come down the bank before, yes, it has. But obviously we've put like 40 mil recycled stone down now, so it'll act as basically a French drain. And what we was going to do in the end was obviously just stone dust it, so it'll always filter through. but it has come through before, obviously through the soil in the old path, but it's always been plagued with fly tipping. We've got all photos of that. And obviously we've tried to maintain it, and ever since we've done the groundwork, all these issues have now arisen, basically. So,
Okay.
yes, and it has eroded all this, as you can see if you go up the slopeways, where you can see where the water's made their channel and blocked the drains down the bottom here.
I mean, I noticed that you've got some photos. I think it might be important that you do send them through to the committee for our consideration. And I would suggest that you liaise with our Democratic Officer, Catherine, about that. Okay, because that's quite important for us to see that. And if you've got dates on those photos, that would be useful as well.
Yes, they have been dated.
Wonderful. Okay, has anyone else got any questions of Mr. Finch? No. Can I thank you very much for your time, Mr. Finch, as well? Okay. If you want to stay on the part one discussion, please do, but take your camera off now, please. And please keep me muted as well. Okay. Now, the next person, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now I believe the local member, which is Councillor Rachel Nugent-Finn, wants to speak. Stefan, is that an old hand or a new hand?
Legacy hand, I'm afraid. I'll lower
it. That's all right. No problem, Stefan. All right, and I believe Councillor Rachel Nugent-Finn wants to speak. Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. And thanks very much to Mr. Shire and Mr. Finch for their representation so far and allowing us to be here this afternoon. Thank you very much. So just a little bit of history, really. I think it's important that I sort of paint a picture of exactly where I am with all of this. So following a meeting and sort of several site visits with the residents of Church Terrace, I was presented with some concerns about the history and the current use of the lane and access, obviously, to both Church Terrace and Casey Hill. Some of the concerns were then over about the land ownership and the potential usage in the future. As you all be aware this afternoon, that the lane provides direct access to both Church Terrace and Casey Hill residents. So I began with establishing the facts, really, of the land ownership and the boundaries with the Vale of Glamorgan estates officers. And then I had sight of the photographic evidence that we've discussed this afternoon, which is including of the rubbish and building debris. And it's been left to build over some time, really. Some of it actually looked like it was completely blocking off the lane access. But again, you'll have sight of these photographs shortly, so I'm hoping that will come to fruition and we can all make better informed decisions. The front access to properties, as you may all be aware, is reached by a number of really high inclined steps, and thus the access for wheelchair users, specifically Pat, this is the lane access is very important, and obviously for emergency vehicles accessing it as well. Then this led me to inquire about having the lane levelled up and used as access specifically with maybe a gate, and this being access for all. This seemed to be a way forward, again, sort of mitigating any concerns with health and safety as well. In recent meeting with the estates officer, I was informed that the land where the lane is sited was being sold to the resident of Casey Hill. And when I asked about the consultation, which I am aware has been alluded to this afternoon, but I feel it's important, when I asked about the consultation with the residents of Church Terrace, I was informed that this had not taken place. And really, due to the nature of the land ownership of the Vale and not having any obligation to consult, that's when I wanted to contact the officers dealing with this and requested that the sale was halted until further inquiries could be made. And, you know, may I place on record my thanks to the committee for allowing this to happen. So this is really the position we're at now, because I feel residents do feel completely out of the loop with regards to the consultancy from this independent surveyor. And I can't help but add that if that had taken place, we may not be here this afternoon. It's all about establishing the facts, looking at the deeds and the ownership, some of the issues that Mr. Finch has brought up about the fact on the boundary wall, the condition, the ownership, and then future issues mitigated going forward, that this lane will be not be blocked and will be accessible to all. Because once we, whoever purchases this property, it then becomes their ownership, in terms of looking after it for the future, etc. And again, has been alluded to this afternoon, but the access to this lane is in very poor condition as well. So there's a lot of question marks around this situation, committee. So thank you very much for your time.
And that's 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for your contribution. And has anyone got any questions of Rachel before we move to part 2? I can't hear any indications from that. Okay, yes.
Councillor Charles has got her hand.
Yes.
Councillor Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rachel, from what the last speaker said, is the only access for these elderly people through the back lane, because that is the flat area, and at the front there's too many steps? I didn't quite understand that bit.
Sorry, yes, Councillor Charles. The actual nature of access from the front elevation of Church Terrace is very steep incline steps, and Pat is a wheelchair user, so does like to access it via the lane. And again, thinking ahead for emergency vehicles, this would probably be their preferred option as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to ask Councillor Nugent-Finn anything? No, I don't. Can I thank you very much for your contribution, and can I also thank Mr. Shire and Mr. Feach for your contributions now. What we're going to do, we're going to move to part 2 now of the meeting. So those people, could you make sure those people are not present, I'm afraid, because of part 2?
Yes, so if we can just get, first off, can I have a mover and a seconder for part 2, please?
I'm happy to move it. Can someone
Seconded.
second? Thank you.
Lovely. So that the live stream has restarted, and then we'll resume, please.
Okay. Happy? Thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to be looking at the investment management strategy review. Gemma?
Hello, hi, good evening. I previously brought a report to committee proposing a potential way forward, and committee agreed to move towards a collective investment fund approach. In order to proceed with that recommendation, this report proposes that we work in partnership with our the Council's Treasury Management Advisors in the capacity where they will be advising trustees on through officers, putting together a questionnaire and circulating them to a long list of providers, advising officers on the review of those questionnaire responses, providing wider information around those organisations, and providing a recommendation in terms of a way forward. In terms of timescales, this report also asks for a delegation in order to progress those recommendations and move forward with the previous decision of the committee in terms of moving the investments across to that collective investment fund approach. The cost of the assistance is £5,000, but as this is an investment management cost, it can be set against the reserves of the trust.
Okay, open to any member. Okay, I've got no indicating. Are we happy to support those recommendations? 1 and 2. Fine. Thank you very much. We're now
Lovely,
moving on to the next item. Thank you very much for that. The land to the rear of Church Road.
Thank you, Chair.
Yep.
Again, this is just to provide an update to committee following the last resolution. The committee at the meeting of June 2021 resolved that a determination regarding how to move forward with a long-term solution associated with the maintenance and management of the land be deferred pending individual site visits of trustees, and that the owners of properties at Church Road adjacent to the land be contacted to advise a possible opportunity to gain possession of the land. That resolution, I can't speak on behalf of the members' site visit, but I can in terms of the second resolution, and the details of that will be updated under part 2 of the agenda, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I think we note that and we wait till we get to part 2 on that matter. Okay, thank you. Now moving on to the next item, which is Caddiston Community Orchard proposal.
Thank you, Chair. That's me again, and this is to advise committee of a new matter which has not been brought before committee previously. It's a proposal that's been submitted by Barry Town Council in respect of land adjacent to St Oswald's Road. Again in Caddiston, there seems to be Caddiston Central today, and it's for a community orchard proposal. The details of which are again contained in the part 2 agenda, but it's a proposal for, as I say, a community orchard and meadow, and the details are again attached to part 2.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we note that and we'll discuss that under part 2. Thank you. We now got the land at Gleedfield, Surrey, which is the Town and Village Green Inquiry application.
Thanks, Chair. This one's one I'll be presenting. So the Council, as Commons Registration Authority, has received an application for the registration of a town and village green on the land known as Gleedfield, which we're all aware of. As the landowner, so we've received a notice of the application from the Councillor's Registration Authority as the landowner. Therefore, we need to consider the application and our response to it. So within the report, I have set out the implications to the trust on the basis that if the application was to be successful, which would have the effect of fundamentally sterilising the land for the uses contained within the Town and Village Green application. So what we are recommending is that delegated authority be provided to the head of Legal and Democratic Services / operational manager to respond to the application within the timescales required by the Commons Registration Authority, and that the committee provide delegated authority to instruct a specialist external barrister to advise the officers who have the delegated authority from the trust in how to respond, and also to act on our behalf in any further dealings with the matter. There are some other details that are contained within the part 2 report that committee will need to consider prior to making the decision in this matter. But the decision is to be made in part 1, but the information that is needed for full consideration is contained in part 2. So I'd ask committee to move to part 2 to receive that information before coming back at the end the decision-making process itself.
Okay, I think before we move to part 2, James, obviously we got two local members, and I just wondered if they want to say anything before we move to part 2 on that issue.
Councillor Bob Penrose, thanks for the opportunity, Chair. Really speaking, because the application has been put in, I think we just wanted to observe to ensure that the application was being processed, and both Councillor Marnie and myself are purely observing. We're not speaking. I think the application is self-explanatory, and we won't be staying for part 2.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Councillor Marnie.
Yes, I was just wondering to ask the question whether you feel it's appropriate now. Just been listening to earlier about your Cassie Lane thing. When we've talked about the glebe fields in the past, we were informed that if any part of the land at glebe fields is to be sold, it has to go out to public advertising and auction. I was gleaning from that this hasn't happened to you. Maybe you can confirm that. I'd also have to ask as well, I was going to send in a written communication to Debbie Miles, actually. Previous advice has been that any councillors wishing to dispose of the glebe field in any way could be surcharged if they didn't, because of the valuation that had been put on these glebe fields on a hope valuation. I've since spoken to 2 solicitors, one with a long history of local authority experience and one who hasn't, but very experienced in these matters, and they both basically laughed their heads off. So can we have, is it with having confirmation of that, please? I think it was James who gave that information, that advice to us. I realise I'm not on the committee anymore.
No, I understand that, Kevin, and thank you for your questions. James, do you want to quickly respond?
Yeah, so if I take the points in order, so the first point in relation to the valuation advice. So the advice that has been given to committee on numerous occasions before in relation to any disposal of land is that it must be done under the in accordance with the terms of the Charity Act, which is that it must be done in respect of a qualified surveyor's report. And the difference between this piece of land and the land at Cassie Hill was that in the Cassie Hill matter, the surveyor's report recommended a private treaty sale, and in the glebe field advice, it was advised that a broader tender would be more appropriate. So all that we had come back to committee on in those instances was to the report committee what the qualified surveyor's professional opinion was on the best route to dispose of those pieces of land in accordance with the legislation. So there's no conflict amongst those two aspects. In relation to the surcharging, well, I think the point that I've made previously is that ultimately the members of this committee are acting as trustees for the trust fund, and therefore they are they are under the scrutiny of the Charities Commission. And the point that was being made for the protection of the individuals who are those trustees is that they need to act in accordance with charities law, and therefore on any disposal of land at Gleefield or anywhere else, if the members of the committee chose to do something other than what was recommended by the qualified surveyor, then there is a chance that the Charity Commission could look into that and use whatever powers it has available to take what action it thinks necessary. And if that meant that the trust had lost a significant amount of money in any transaction, then that could be looked into. So that was all that I was saying, and it was only in respect of the protection for the and just as a point of clarity, I was just wondering whether it needs to be, whether the local members need to note any sort of declaration of interest if they're speaking on the matter.
Yeah, that is a good point to consider.
Just for the clarity of the record, I think.
Yeah. Do the local members, the Councillor Penrose or Councillor Marnie, want to declare anything if they want to?
Well, I'll declare that I have made a statement of having used the glebe fields to the applicants, if you like, as a former resident there.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to respond?
But my question, sorry to butt in there, Mark.
Yeah, sure.
Perhaps I should take this up with Debbie Miles, this information, because this isn't to do with any current application, is it? But this is to do with previous advice, which applies to all of you guys. And you know, to have two solicitors to say that, in their opinion, that you deal with land that is present valuation, not a hope valuation in this instance, and they're both quite adamant. It just cropped up in conversation, a similar scenario elsewhere as it happens. So I guess I should seek written clarification, perhaps both off James of what he means, and also of Debbie. As I say, this has nothing to do with the application. This is one of my concerns from before on that particular piece of land. So I do declare a declaration, and that's why I haven't pursued being allowed to be in part 2, which I understand there's a scenario where we can do that I wouldn't have stayed anyway, even if that had been agreed. So thank you for that.
That's all right. Thank you, Kevin. Janice, do you want to come in on this before we move to part 2?
Bob Penrose, can I clarify?
Sure.
The point raised, declaration of interest, I've inquired this previously. We are attending as observers in part 1 of this meeting. We have not requested to speak, and like Councillor Marnie, I've put a witness statement as far as the use of the glebe field. But basically speaking, you know, I'm not a member of this committee, so I wouldn't take part in the declaration of interest for the committee at the start of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to speak now? Because Janice, want to come?
Yeah, excuse my ignorance on this, but when you said we would be subject to the Charity Commission, is their law different then? Can they overrule the Welsh Church Act and what they feel? Because it does state in the Welsh Church Act, which I've said over and over again, and I do somehow feel a bit bullied, really, in some of the information I've received, in as much as the Welsh Church Act said that we must also take into consideration the benefits of people of the area.
Yeah, no, so yeah, the position is that, you know, the trustee does mention that there are things that you can take into consideration, and that's fine, and that you are able to take those into consideration. And ultimately, if the legislation in the Charities Act says that if you wish to make a decision that is contrary to that which a qualified surveyor has indicated is the most appropriate, then you may need to advise the Charities Commission as to why you've made that decision. And I'm not saying for 1 second that if you do this will definitely happen, and if you do that will definitely happen. All I'm here to do is to advise the committee on the potential issues that may arise, and to ensure that as trustees that you are protecting yourselves as well. And ultimately, it's that, you know, if you want further specific advice on it, and we can get specialist charity advice in if members do have significant concerns about it. But what I would say is that it's the Charity Commission is there to review the acts of charities and ensure that they're acting appropriately. Now, I don't know, I'm not a specialist enough in charity laws to say what view they would take on what particular action. It's just there to notify you, and if the committee feels they don't have sufficient charity advice, then we can seek to get that if required.
Yeah, I can't help feeling that perhaps, because we're here as Welsh Church representatives, not the Vale of Council representatives, and I can't help but feeling that the Vale of Glamorgan are pushing this, and things are not being actually made quite clear to us. So I would like the information on whether we can adhere to what the Welsh Church Act says, in as much as that we can look to the benefit of the community, not just the benefit of the Vale Glamorgan housing lists.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd come back and say on that is that, you know, as with the councillors sitting on this committee, you know, the officers are in the same position as we are here to advise the committee as trustees, not as councillors of the council. So we're looking at the best. There's no council-based agenda behind the advice that's being given. We're here to advise the committee on its role.
Thank you.
I apologise if I offended, and thank you very much.
No, that's fine. I think it's very useful questions you asked there, Janice, and I think we all appreciate what you've said. Actually, to be honest, I know that Kevin has spoken twice. Have you got anything new to add, or is it just a repeat of what you just said?
No, sorry, new. I'll be finished now. I realise not on the committee. Just point out, as Bob has, I've expressed to you that I have made a submission to the applicants here. I shouldn't really have to be making a declaration, although I have, because I'm not on your committee. I'm not discussing anything to do with what you're going to do with this, which is in part two anyway. I was just bringing up a point after being invited by yourself on a previous thing, which was disposal of land, not the matter in hand here, which is totally different. So whether you regard that as a declaration, because I'm not involved in any of your deliberations and I won't be in part two anyway, and don't have any input into your meetings other than the very brief, although it's getting longer now, comments you asked me to make. But thank you very much for the opportunity.
That's all right.
Cheers, then.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Bob. Okay, if you can now remove yourself from the meeting, that'd be greatly appreciated. We're now going to be moving to part two matters now.
Could I get a formal second on that, please, Chair?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Can formal second that, Stefan?
Thank you very much. If we could just pause proceedings for a minute or so to make sure we're all set up.
Thanks. Are we now? I think we're now back in part one.
Yes, can we just formally move in second part one?
Yeah.
I'll formally move.
Many thanks. So for the benefit of the live stream and the recording, whilst discussing the community orchard agenda item under part two, councillors Drake, Charles and William declared an interest as members of Barry Town Council and vacated the meeting before any further discussion took place.
Thank you. Okay, we're now on agenda item 8 now, and we're going back to the part 1 report. I'd like to move recommendations 1 to 3. And do I have a seconder?
I'll second that. Am I allowed to?
Yes, I think so. We're happy with that? Okay then, thank you very much. And moving on, I got no other item on the agenda. All right, meeting is closed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.